been 20 years since I started writing and recording my own music, and in each of those 20 years, someone wanted to give me a gift for my birthday or for Christmas and seemed to have absolutely no idea what to give me. For the longest time, I could not understand this problem because sometimes my hobby doesn't feel like I'm making so much as buying things. But the truth is that the world of recording gear can be somewhat impenetrable to an outsider, even a well-intentioned outsider who wants to give you something that you're going to love. I want this video to be a peek into this world for exactly that person, somebody who just wants to give a good gift. So whether you're watching this for yourself or looking for recommendations to give to somebody else, I hope that this will give you an idea of some really good gifts for a home recording enthusiast. In this video, I'm going to try to focus on things that are somewhat universal, though I'll admit that I am going to stray into some areas that are a little bit more specific, and you'll have to make a judgment call about whether those areas apply to you or really to the person that you're shopping for. And one last thing before I dive in, there are really two places that you can shop for this kind of gear: brick and mortar stores or online. Each option involves a set of trade-offs. Online stores will have a much wider selection, not only of types of gear, but of brands and of price points. But brick and mortar stores can have a more curated inventory, and they will have customer service personnel that can help you find the gift that hopefully will be right for you, for them, whoever you're buying for. If you need a tiebreaker, I personally love brick and mortar stores and highly recommend that you go spend time at one of yours. And that's what I did today in order to help inform some of the recommendations that I'm going to make in this video. So with all that out of the way, let's get into the list. I want to start by talking about gift ideas that are budget-friendly, stocking stuffer type ideas. I tried to include items in this section only if they could be bought for $30 or less. One of the core ingredients of a home recording setup is some sort of sound source with which to listen back to the stuff that you've recorded. Your gift recipient probably already has a set of headphones or a speaker, but in my experience, it's really nice to have multiple sound sources because each one will have its own character and help you identify potential problems or really sweet spots in your mix. And my first budget recommendation is a small, inexpensive speaker. This is not an original idea. I have heard professional producers talk about the value of mixing on a crappy speaker, and there are other far more successful YouTubers who have talked about the value of a device like this in their setups. But this little thing has proven invaluable to me. Not because it's especially good, in fact, really because it's not very good. I like that it's small and portable, and if you're considering something like this for your loved one, I recommend you find one that has an auxiliary in, meaning a jack, probably a headphone jack, into which you can plug the output from another sound source so that they could use a speaker like this to play back what they had been recording in like a Portastudio or on their computer. Now I want to move on to a couple of mundane options, and I'm going to start with a power strip. A home recording setup can easily balloon into a lot of different pieces of gear, many of which require power. And having access to a good, reliable power source with a fair number of inputs can really help you organize your workspace and avoid frustrating hiccups in your process. There's nothing worse than being in the middle of a creative flow and then realizing that you can't plug in the thing that you need without unplugging something else that you need. I probably have 2 or 3 power strips in use in this shed that exist solely to help me power specific pieces of gear in specific places. Your person may have a similar need, and you may be surprised by how happy they are to see one of these in a stocking. While we're thinking about things that are deceptively mundane, let's talk about cable ties. This is a set of ties that I ordered on Amazon for like $5. I bought them because my recording setup has a lot of cables, and we're going to talk more about cables later, but for now, just look at how this cable has been pulled together into a beautiful tight-knit circle thing. I don't even know what you would call this, but it's held together by a cable tie. In the absence of this tie, this beautiful little circle thing will slowly degrade into a cacophonous mess that more than likely is going to be entangled with other cacophonous messes of other untangled cords. It can quickly become the definition of chaos and a real pain in the ass. And all you have to do is buy a few cable ties to encourage your loved one to keep their stuff in order. And as much as I sort of hate to admit it, a little bit of order and organization can improve your creative process. And while I'm holding up a cable, I guess we should talk about cables. Unless space is a consideration, you basically can't have enough cables, and there are really 4 kinds of cables that I could not live without. 2 of them are extraordinarily common in every recording setup. The old XLR cable, which is designed to connect microphones to most mixers, and then normal TS or instrument cables. And there are two more types of cables that are really important to me and may be important to somebody that you love. One is a stereo breakout cable. This allows you to take a stereo source and break it into two independent mono sources. This one uses 1/4 inch connectors, but I actually use more often a version that goes down to a little like 3.5 millimeter like headphone jack and then breaks that out into 1/4 inch connectors. And because I spend a lot of time with older gear, I live in a world where RCA connectors are still a thing, but this is kind of the tip of an iceberg that I don't think you really want to deal with. If you're gonna give something, I recommend sticking with the basics. It's no exaggeration to say that your home recording enthusiast needs a lot of cables. I have several bins full for a reason. Speaking of bins, it might be nice to give your person somewhere to put their cable cacophony. It's hard to call this organized, but at least I know where all of these cables are when I'm in the mood to untangle them. All joking aside, little efficiency improvements really do help when you're in the moment of creating and want everything to be as easy and smooth as possible. Speaking of easy and smooth, if your person records vocals as part of their process, you could save them a lot of trouble by buying them something like a pop filter or a windscreen. These are available at a variety of price points. Little windscreens like this one are very inexpensive. I think this one was like $2. But if you really want to protect against plosives, I recommend a pop filter. This one was about $20, and its 2 layers of mesh screen have proven very effective, though 1 layer would be enough. And in fact, you can make a DIY pop filter using pantyhose and anything that's this kind of circular shape. And they make like nicer pop filters that use plastic or metal instead of mesh, but those can quickly get outside of the budget range. And honestly, I've had some of those before and they weren't really any better. Something like this will definitely do the job. A recording project involves a lot of jobs, including some that even the recording person might not expect. And as boring as this may sound, tape is often very useful for solving those problems. I like to use gaffer tape if I need to tape something to a table or to a stand or to any other situation where I want that thing not to move very much. And painter's tape is useful in the opposite situation. If I wanted to label the tracks that I was using on my Portastudio to identify the specific instruments that I had recorded to each track, I would put a strip of painter's tape underneath the faders and write on this so that it can be easily removed at the end of my session. Seriously, boring but useful. I mentioned my Portastudio, so this seems like a nice opportunity to talk about physical media. I like to record to cassette, and to do that, I need cassettes. New, old stock, or sealed cassettes can be kind of expensive, especially Type 2 cassettes. That is, if you're buying them in bulk, but just a handful of cassettes can certainly be found in what I'm thinking of as the budget range. Go look around on eBay or maybe shopgoodwill.com. Even some specialty record stores can carry unused cassettes. It's not as trendy to be recording to CDs, though some people still do that, and blank CDs are, in fact, much easier to find. They're definitely on Amazon and maybe even at your local big box store. But that option will only be relevant if you're shopping for a person who uses those types of physical media in their process. And for the last item I'm going to recommend in this budget section, I have to include a similar caveat. There are a ton of music accessories that can be bought in the budget range, from guitar picks to guitar strings to guitar straps to drumsticks. But as their names suggest, they are associated with particular kinds of instruments, and your person will appreciate them only if he or she uses the relevant instrument. I mean, case in point, I don't even know what kinds of instrument-specific accessories a keyboard player would use, much less a trumpet player or violinist. But if you go to a local brick-and-mortar music store, someone who works there will know, and hopefully will be able to give you good advice. That concludes my list of gift ideas in the budget range. Let's move on to some ideas that I consider mid-priced, which to me means that they fall anywhere between like $30 and maybe $90 or $100. Many items in this range are going to be on the high end of or outside of many budgets. But in the world of recording gear, I mean, this shit is actually pretty inexpensive. And if it's something that's within your price range, I'm sure your favorite recording enthusiast would appreciate one of these items. The first recommendation I'll make in this range is the all-important microphone. In 2024, many people produce music entirely in the digital domain. But if there is any element that exists in the physical world, you've got to find a way to get that sound into your recording device. And that way will most often involve a microphone. Now, there are a lot of different types, sizes, shapes, brands of microphones, and a lot of different price points. That's exciting for people who are into home recording but could easily overwhelm someone who's just passing through. So I'm going to try to make broad recommendations that I think could apply to most any home recorder. The first is that everybody should have at least one dynamic microphone. This is a very famous type of dynamic microphone. It's called the Shure SM57. It's got sort of a sibling microphone called the SM58 that looks more like the kind of mic that somebody would hold when they were singing. And they are workhorse mics that have been used on a billion tours and in a billion studio sessions. And if you were going to pick one microphone to give to somebody, I would recommend it be something like this. But what if they already have a few mics, or you want to do something that isn't quite so basic? In that case, I would recommend that you look for something that I'm just going to broadly call a flavor mic. And what I mean is a mic that by design or simply because of its age is going to do something different than the average mic that you could just buy at a Guitar Center. My favorite flavor mic is this old telephone receiver that's been turned into a microphone. It imparts a very characteristic sound. A sound that some of you will really like. But if you're not into that, there are a variety of other flavor mics that are easy to find on sites like eBay or a sort of music-related eBay called Reverb. If you go searching there, I recommend that you look for vintage microphones and basically sort by price. It's pretty easy to find mics that are old and were designed for an application that's not hi-fi music recording and which are often very inexpensive. Worst case scenario, you give somebody a piece of history. Best case, it's a piece of gear that they learn to love. There's one other category of mic that I want to mention here because it can be found in this price range, and that is USB mics. These are typically plug-and-play devices that you use simply by inserting the USB connector that comes with them into a computer. That straightforward connectivity makes these really great mics for people who are just getting started with home recording or who just want something portable that they can use to work on demos or anything else that they want to capture outside of their ordinary space. In a similar vein, I'm a big fan of handheld recorders like this Zoom H1. Now, because it's not loaded with features, you might wonder, is it really any better than like the Voice Memos app on your iPhone? And honestly, that's a really good question, but I think the answer is yes. Devices like this one can allow you to record a fairly clean and unaffected signal, often in stereo, and to store it in a digital file format that most people would consider usable in their future recording sessions. So in addition to recording things like simple demos, I have used this device to record acoustic guitar tracks when I was away from my normal recording space that I later incorporated into a real full-blown recording project. So if your person is willing to keep one more thing in their pocket or bag, this is a really good option. Continuing with the trend of portable recording, you might consider a portable audio interface. An audio interface is a device that allows you to connect things like a microphone to a computer or a phone or another digital device that you would use to record the sounds coming from this. If your person is using a computer as the hub for their recording, they almost certainly already have an audio interface, but they might not have one that's portable. And if you think they have an interest in recording in unusual locations, capturing field recording style sounds in the real world, or simply being ready to demo whenever an idea strikes, you might consider a portable audio interface. I have one of these that's made by IK Multimedia. It's called the iRig Pro. I would show it to you, but it's currently connected to my iPhone, helping me record this video. And for what it's worth, it is one of the best investments that I have made to help me improve the audio quality of these videos because it's simple, portable, and allows me to connect microphones, not this one, but the one that's sitting right here, so that it can record the things that I'm saying directly into the video file that I'm making. It's a cool thing that somebody out there might enjoy. Whether you're out in the field or in your dedicated recording space, it's nice to have a place to put your microphones when you're using them so you don't have to hold them in your hands. And in my experience, most mic stands fall within this mid-price range. I've acquired mic stands of all shapes and sizes, and honestly, they are all useful, but they vary widely in size, and space constraints may be one of the key factors in helping someone determine what kind of mic stand is going to work best for them. If you have a dedicated space like this one, it's great to have fully standing mic stands with boom arms that can be adjusted to different heights and angles. But if you have less space, you can get a lot of work done with something like this. It's just a small version of the bigger mic stands I have around this room. And because of its size, it's perfect for setting on a desktop or right next to a sound source that's low to the ground like a guitar amplifier. If you consider buying a small mic stand like this one, bear in mind that a microphone is going to be relatively heavy compared to the weight of the stand itself, and it's easy for smaller stands to be thrown off balance. That's why this and many other small stands have a weight at the bottom. I think that's essential. It makes this easier to use and gives me a lot of peace of mind. Next, I'm going to recommend something called a DI box. DI stands for direct inject and refers to the typical use for a device like this, which is to take the output from an instrument like a guitar, and I guess to optimize the signal that's coming out of that instrument for injection or being plugged into an audio interface or a multi-tracker or whatever you're using to receive the inbound signal. That in and of itself can be really valuable, though it's not essential. An audio interface or a multi-tracker with a variety of different inputs will perform basically the same function. So why then am I recommending this? Because this is a passive DI box. It's really just a transformer inside of a metal box. And that transformer works both ways. And what that means for our purposes is that you can use this to patch outside signals into the type of signal and strength that guitar gear is expecting to see. This is valuable because the guitar market is a pretty big market, and there is a lot of gear that's been created to serve guitar players. Not just guitars and amplifiers, but effects pedals, which are little boxes like this, that can do really radical things to a sound signal. These are designed to work with guitars and not with, say, the signal that comes from a microphone. But you can connect this to this using this. People rarely talk about this use for a passive DI box, but I can assure you that it works and can open up a variety of sonic possibilities to your loved recorder. Now, on the subject of sonic possibility, I want to talk about my last mid-tier recommendation, and that is instruments. Now, at first blush, that may seem like a terrible recommendation for this price range, but actually there are a lot of different instruments that can be bought in this $30 to $100 range. They might not be the best instruments ever made, but it's 2024, and if we can make a computer that you can fit in your pocket, we can make inexpensive instruments, and many companies have. They are pretty easy to find, certainly online and even at brick and mortar stores, and I think the real question is, what kind of instrument might your loved one appreciate? And I recommend that you pick something that they could play based on their existing set of skills, but that they don't already have, and maybe that they've never even considered. Let me explain with an example. I am primarily a guitar player, and one year for Christmas, my college girlfriend bought me an inexpensive mandolin, which is a small stringed instrument that I had never played before, that's used predominantly in a style of music that I had never really listened to. But it was still a stringed instrument, and some of the basic mechanics of playing guitar were transferable, and I think because of that, exploring sounds on that instrument was really exciting. I loved it and got a lot of mileage out of it. So much mileage that I eventually broke it. And I mourn the passing of that mandolin because it's one of the best music-related gifts I've ever received. And your person might feel the same way about a mandolin or a ukulele or a tenor guitar. Or even hand percussion. It's easy to use and can add a lot to a recording project. And you'll find there are a surprising number of options within this mid-price range. And if you can swing it, I recommend you consider them. They could make somebody really happy. And that concludes not only my list of mid-price options, but this entire video. I hope that this has been helpful to you, or that it may be helpful to someone that you love. If you think I've made a glaring omission, please recommend other excellent gift ideas in the comments. And if you think I've given some horrible advice, flag that there as well. And while you're considering your feedback, let me thank you very much for your time. I hope you're doing well. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you around.